in general, Unit 2 focuses on the general and primary assessment directives of Namibia, promotion policies and primary method of assessment is competency-based, and the rules at examination centers will also be looked at. All right, so as with Unit 1, I will not read every point here, but I will discuss the main or important parts underneath each of these points. Okay. So the DNEA stands for the Directorate of National Examinations and Assessment. They have certain functions that they do. They have objectives and they have activities. I have separated these three, the functions, objectives, and activities. This is a very important part of Unit 2, and make sure that you know exactly what each of these mean. Okay. So the function of this directorate is to provide a national assessment and certification service for the school system. It is to assist in enhancing and quality of education, and its last function is to monitor educational standards. So to make sure that we are on a good standard in terms of education. Right, those three are the functions of the DNEA. We move on to the objectives of the DNEA. And the first one is to successfully administer the examination and certification functions of the national school examinations. So objectives means what do they want to achieve? Okay. They want to progressively take over from CIE the professional and administrative functions of the ICSI and HICSI examinations, and to continuously monitor and improve the security. Lastly, the last objective is to provide information and statistics for the monitoring of quality and standards in the education system, and therefore ensuring equitable access to the national examinations for all. These are a lot of words, but if you find the understanding, it will be easier to learn. Right. Lastly, we look at the activities of the DNEA. Localizing of ICSI and HICSI examinations, improving the security of examinations and certificates, monitoring the quality and standards in the education system, and lastly, ensuring equitable access to national examinations. I have highlighted the most important words here. So this is also verbs. Activities. Incidentally, I see that the first letter of each of the line words in these activities is LIME. So you almost can look at the green, the lime green, which is the activities. And if you remember lime and you know what the L stands for and the I stands for and the M stands for and the E stands for, it might be easier to remember what the activities of the DNEA is. All right, we'll move on to the promotion and assessment policy of upper primary education. So that's 2.2. Okay, so the National Upper Primary Assessment and Promotion Policy is a learner-centered curriculum and learner-centered teaching. It uses a broad range of knowledge and skills which are relevant to a knowledge-based society. Here we get continuous assessment, formative and summative assessment, informal and formal assessment, evaluation, criterion reference grades, and conducting and recording assessment. So many of the things that you hear were already explained in Unit 1. So if you already have that knowledge, it should be easier to go through Unit 2. Right. Just see that we continue here with the promotion part. We just did the assessment part. Promotion is also learner-centered education that presupposes that all children can learn given the right circumstances and recognizes that this will vary from person to person. Thus, learners will progress through basic education in as near to normal time as possible. Some learners will achieve very high, where others will perform adequately, and some learners will be limited in what they can learn. They remain in the same age group, and it remains inclusive. So these are the aspects that deals with the promotion of learners. All right. Comparing promotional policies, that's 2.3, between the national assessment and promotion of pre-primary, lower primary, and upper primary phases. Again, I only took out the most important parts here. It's much longer and a bit more in-depth in your study guide. So when we look at the comparison between these three phases, we've seen that pre-primary is where learners normally enter and they are ready to start with formal learning in grade 1 after they complete a school readiness program in a preschool year. Lower primary refers to grades 1 to 4, and it continues to lay a foundation of learning and lifelong learning. Upper primary is grade 5 to 7, and it continues on a broad base and further develops English as a medium of learning. Okay, again, here is a process that's taking place where one phase builds upon another phase. Okay. When we move on to, we continue with some more points on pre-primary. Pre-primary, like we saw, that is before you go to primary school. It's all learners who turn 6 or on or before 31st of December of pre-primary school year should be admitted to grade 1 the following year. So it's in the year that you turn 7 that you go to grade 1. The lower primary, grade 1 to 4, we focus again on the social and emotional skills which are strengthened in order to promote growth and development of each learner as individual and member of a school and society. The upper primary, grades 5 to 7, there's a division into subject disciplines and it emerges more strongly. So more specific subjects are offered to the learners. There's also a very strong focus on HIV/AIDS education during this phase. All right. Lastly, I'm going to continue with the lower primary. Grading A to E is converted to points. Informal continuous assessments are used. Grade 5 to 7, the upper primary. Also grading A to E is converted to percentage. So where lower primary works on points, the upper primary works on percentages. 6 formal continuous assessment activities is graded per term. Okay. This might seem confusing, but if you read through and you write it down and you self-assess, you should be able to remember all of this. Features, this is 2.4, features of the end of primary education examinations. Number 1, the primary education lasts for 7 years. It's divided into a lower primary and upper primary. So this is primary school that we are talking about. Ideally, a learner begins grade 1 at age 6, and with implementation of the new curriculum for basic education, the grade 7 examinations will be phased out eventually. Continuous assessment used throughout upper primary is that we'll have the end of year examinations. Examination is seen as moderation device, and not more than 40% of the summative grade may be based on tests. Okay, so this fits right in there with the comparisons of the national assessment and promotion policies. Okay. 2.5 is the relation between the Namibian primary assessment directives and the features of competency-based assessment. That is a very long sentence, so we'll break it down. Okay, so 3 components of competence-based assessment is that the emphasis is on outcomes, specifically multiple outcomes, which means it is based on more than one outcome. That is what multiple means. Believe that these outcomes can and should be specified to the point where they are clear and transparent. The jointing of assessments with other learning areas. Okay, so it's important to read up on the characteristics of competency-based assessments, such as the outcomes that include criteria that provides details of what is considered acceptable. Assessment is individual and there is no comparison among learners. All right, so simplify these components to a point where you can understand them. Right. Okay. This is a very important part of Unit 2, and it's about the rules of the administration of the national examinations. In other words, there's a certain checklist that one needs in order to conduct an examination, and it includes the following 12 points. Most important is that learners be at least 30 minutes before starting time. They need to be at the place where they write the exams. They will need their ID documents, identity documents in other words, and their admission permits, which will be checked. The present column will be checked off. They are only allowed to take in authorized materials, which also mean that you will be informed of what you're not allowed to take in and what you are allowed to take in. Students need to be seated at least 15 minutes before the starting time. They are informed of the regulations regarding stationery and equipment. That's basically what I also mentioned with the authorized materials. A seating plan is compiled in triplicate. Triplicate means there are 3 copies of the seating plan. Answer papers are handed out first and then the question papers. Question paper envelopes are checked and open in front of all the candidates or learners writing the exam. And candidates may not read through the paper before starting time. Reading and writing time is included in the time allocation for the paper. So easy to remember this is remember the practical application. Remember when you went to write an examination. What was the rules that you had to adhere to? Okay. All right. We'll move on to 2.7, which is the features of inspections of a national examination center. All right, so inspections will include the security of stationery, question papers and scripts, the examination rooms, invigilation. Invigilation normally means that there will be some staff members or personnel who will be there to overlook the examination, which means they are invigilating the exam. Then conducting of the examination file, and at the end of the examination, and packing and handling of answer scripts after the session is completed. So these are 7 points that forms the features of an inspection for examinations, which means all of this needs to be in order. All right. Moving on to 2.8, we look at the role of assessment in achieving quality education. So what role does assessment play in reaching a state or good standard of education? Assessment is vital, as you will often have to make decisions about learners when you are learning and caring for them. So this has to do with decisions that you need to make about your learners. Assessment plays a role in different areas of quality education. So it's not limited to specific areas. It goes over a variety of areas. The Ministry of Education's assessment strategy meets a number of key purposes, including encouraging continuous development of learners, making reliable decisions regarding learner competence, and providing information to modify learning design and facilitation. When you look at these three aspects, it becomes very clear how important a teacher is, how important assessment is if we want to reach a good quality of education. We need to be aware of this. We need to assess correctly. We need to make quality assessments of learners, each and every one of your learners sitting in your class. All right, so this would bring us to the end of Unit 2.